I'm Nia Vinay. Welcome to my channel where I review art materials and do time-lapse videos of the artworks I make with them. Note that this video is not sponsored in any way. One day if I ever do a sponsored review, I will definitely let you know. Today we'll be reviewing the Winsor & Newton drawing inks. Winsor & Newton has been around for so long and almost every artist knows about it. Before buying these art supplies, I had to think about whether or not I really wanted it. I had a choice between buying Dr. P.H. Martin Bombay India inks or this one last year, but luckily there was one in the warehouse deal from Amazon. So I got the first set, which I bought from about $38, and it came in perfect working condition. Some inks were difficult to open, probably because it's been opened before, because once the ink dries on this one, on the lid specifically, it will solidify, but more on that later. The next set of Winsor & Newton inks I got from Jackson in UK because it's so much cheaper than buying it over here from where I am in Canada. One, I'm getting myself a lot of art materials anyway, so the shipping cost is not that expensive in comparison to buying stuff from, let's say, the US, which is quite weird since they're just our neighbor. So I have a lot of inks, not as much as my watercolor collection, but I do have a fairly good collection of fountain pen inks. I have ones from Diamine, Pilot Namiki, and Iroshizuku, Mont Blanc, J. Herbin, Schaefer. I also have more of the tiny tubes that you plug into your fountain pen, like ones from Settler, but that's about it for the ones that are not waterproof. I also have Parker Quink, but that one's already gone because I used it up, and my Ruhe und Klingner or Rohrer and Klingner Scabiosa, and the green grun, or the old green, yellow-green color. I can't pronounce it for the life of me. It's just that it's hard to pronounce. It's German, and these ones are fountain pen inks that I typically do not leave in my fountain pen because it might clog it. Scabiosa is made of iron gall, like I said, and those are not very friendly with your modern day fountain pens. Then I have my ink sticks. You add water and grind them down with an inkstone, and they produce the ink in that way. You usually use a brush on it, but I've seen people use dip pens and nibs. It's very therapeutic to use. They call the colored ink sticks that I have here Saiboku, and they're from Pigment Tokyo from a brand called Boko Undo. So they're the same as the black ones, it's just that they have color in them. I also have my favorite deleter inks, black and white. I use white for correcting darker colors on my paintings. It's like poster color but not, so I'm not quite sure if I would call it an ink because it doesn't have an ink-like consistency. I haven't done research as to what it's made out of, aside from the fact that a lot of manga artists supposedly use it. So I also have a few calligraphy inks. I used to have one from Winsor & Newton, and it spilled out of its bottle while I was moving from place to place. And I guess I don't miss it because Winsor & Newton calligraphy inks smell really bad. So if you're planning to get one, they really smell bad. The reason why I'm showing you all of these is because I started doing watercolor reviews, and I have been using watercolor for maybe 7 years now, and I haven't really used ink all that much, so I wanted to diversify my experience with it, and now I can give you a more accurate review of Winsor & Newton. As always, we'll be rating this product in terms of availability, pigment information, packaging, transparency, cost, and experience. In terms of availability, I would rate this a 4 out of 5. Since you can buy one on Amazon, and online it's not difficult to get. However, I don't think they sell Winsor & Newton drawing inks in almost every art store, So if you're planning to get one locally, I'm not sure if you can find one. The individual colors are also pricier, and some sets would have similar colors. So I have 2 sets, and in both sets there's the color black. So when it comes to pigment information, there's none because it doesn't use pigment. This one is a dye-based ink, and it says on the packaging, where it's quite easy to miss in a very small print, that the only inks permanent to light are black and white. So in terms of light fastness, you know from this statement that these inks are not light fast at all, except for black and white. And it's nice to know that, and it's nice that they put that there. However, because of that, pigment information is a 1 out of 5. This also means that any artwork you create with these inks must be kept away from sunlight. But I don't often display my artwork, they usually stay covered. I do take photos and post them on Instagram just because I've been doing that more lately, just to keep track of progress. Maybe one day I'll sell prints, but like I said in my other videos, it's not a good idea to sell the original that you make out of these inks or materials that are not light fast, because the person cannot display it in any way. Or if you are planning to send it out, just make sure that there is a warning that says that you can't display this directly in sunlight. As far as toxicity as well is concerned, it's not as toxic as some of the art materials that you can use, but it is still toxic. It contains shellac and it's dye-based, so I'm not quite sure if it uses other pigments. So shellac is not super toxic. I believe this is where the ink becomes permanent. So when the ink dries, you'll notice that it will have this shiny finish, and shellac is often used as a sealant for porous material, and this is the stuff that makes India ink permanent and waterproof. However, shellac will also clog your fountain pen, so do not use this at all for your fountain pens if you have it. Unlike water-based dyes and water-based inks, once this thing dries, like I said, it's waterproof and permanent, and it will be a pain to remove, partly because this thing will solidify, almost like glue. So a word of warning, don't use it when it says you're not supposed to, and make sure you clean your brushes right after using this ink. With water is fine, but it can clog the hairs and the bristles of your brushes, so it will damage it, so just make sure to clean it, and don't try to use this ink on a plastic palette that you love. Maybe use it on a ceramic or porcelain, unless you want to try using acetone to scrub it off, which can work. Once this dries on your palette, you will not be able to reactivate it. When watercolor and gouache dries, for example, you can re-wet it again and it's usable. With this ink, however, you're better off cleaning your palette as well right after you use it, so you don't have to go through the pain of cleaning it before using it. And if you ever try to reactivate it, it will form these bits and clumps that may have some color in it, but it's so gritty and granular, and not in the nice way. So if you ever try to use inks, you'll know what I'm saying. And so we'll move on to packaging. I love the packaging of these inks. I mean, who doesn't? Look at how gorgeous it is. They're so pretty. They're just so pretty. And I will rate it a 3 out of 5. Even though it's beautiful. It is something you'd like to display. It's a vintage type of product that would just look so nice if you just put it on a shelf or something. And look at the art. It's very catchy. So the packaging of the product kind of makes you want to use it, because it's, I don't know, it's cute. For me, it looks cute. But it's still a 3 out of 5. 1, because of the ink itself, and 2, because of the packaging. So I mentioned early on that these inks dry, and when they dry like a sealant. And in this case, if you unscrew the cap and some of the ink gets stuck on the lid and like at the top portion of the bottle, when the ink dries, you have to stick a knife or something hard underneath to loosen the cap, which is very time consuming. So every time you have to open it, you have to make sure that there's no leftover ink that can harden around the cap and the lid of the bottle. I was making this video, I couldn't open my older set because of the very same reason, and I wish that this warning was there for the other video reviews because it would have saved me so much time. And well, it shouldn't really matter if you use it regularly because the ink wouldn't have had the time to harden like glue, but once it does dry, it's very stubborn and it sticks. Another problem with this set is you see that some of the drawing inks and the watercolor inks come with a pipette, or no, a dropper rather. This one doesn't have that, so I suggest you get yourself a pipette or a dropper, because I don't suggest dipping your brush inside the container because it might contaminate it. And I'm quite anal with materials that I treasure because I don't want and I don't tolerate mixing colors on watercolor or any type of ink. So you can make these inks dirty, especially since it's liquid. And if you mix a very potent like color inside of it, you'll ruin the color that's inside of the ink. So because of that, I would really rate this a 3 out of 5. If they added a dropper, then it would have been perfect, but I think that would have ruined the packaging as well. So makes me wonder if I should rate it higher, but because it's kind of a pain at times, I don't know. I think I'll stick to 3 out of 5. One thing that I did to make sure that it'd be easier for me to open, and it's something that I'm not sure if you should do as well because it might interfere with the properties of the ink, is I decided to put petroleum jelly around the lid to keep it very lubricated, the same way I would put it on the wheels of certain stuff that I use, and hopefully that will keep it from hardening and sticking to the lid like glue. So probably I'll let you know in the future if that works out, but I wasn't really keen on this the lid getting stuck again or happening again, so which is why I did that. As far as transparency goes, I'll rate this a 5 out of 5. There's no granularity in the color that you can see. It's really transparent and it's flat as it can go. And layering is quite easy to do because it's permanent. However, this also means that you can't mix with the colors underneath. Like you can't reactivate it the way you have with gouache or watercolor. The only way you can make corrections to is if you mix it with gouache or any opaque media. When it comes to the cost, it's a 4 out of 5. It's not that expensive considering the quality, but it's also expensive enough that maybe you shouldn't really get it unless you're serious about trying ink. A little goes a long way, so this tiny bottle over here is quite deceptive. Like, I just used 2 to 5 drops of a few colors to finish a half-letter size painting. So unless you're the type that paints like really big pieces, you wouldn't find yourself thinking that this is not enough. If you're watching this video, you should probably know what score I'm going to give the painting experience, or experience for that matter. But before that, I'll want to show you the pieces that I used these inks on. I really went all out and used this interchangeably with all my other art materials for Inktober. I used it with watercolor, gouache, markers, brush pens, gold leaf, and all sorts of things. I even used it with pigment, and it was just really fun. I think it's the medium that I focused and used the most for Inktober last year. The first painting that I really enjoyed making with these was the Undertale inspired painting. And then I got inspired by the Japanese aesthetics, so I found myself working more and more paintings with different styles, thicker line art, and all in all, it was so fun to use. There has got to be something to be said when your art materials inspire you to make more art. You know, sometimes they say that cheap art materials kind of make you want to quit on your art, and that is so true. As a kid, I'm not sure if I've already said this before, I thought all watercolors were lame, you know, just chalky, muddy, and not all that pigmented. Because every time my parents gave me a set, it was the cheapest set that they could find. And then sometime in college, my best friend showed me a painting she made with watercolor. I was surprised and I suddenly felt like I was living under a rock. That you can make something so bright, so vivid with watercolor. And all this time, I was like, what have I been doing? And I fell in love with this medium. And so when I started using this ink, it gave me the same feeling. It gave me the same reaction that I first felt when I used an art material that I identified with. It was really fun and also challenging because of the difference of how ink and watercolor behaves. While they're similar, they dry differently. One is permanent and one is not as permanent. So when you make mistakes with this, it feels really sad because as much as I want to just use one medium, I decided to not be so caught up in just staying with inks and use it with other materials like gouache to make my life easier. I also made something with a recent set that I bought, and it also turned out quite nice. I guess at this point you should know that if I can rate the experience higher than 5, I would. But since 5 is the highest, then it will get a 5 out of 5. So obviously painting with this has been amazing. And overall, the score is a 3.7 out of 5. The only glaring problem is like the light fastness and that it uses dye instead of pigment. Would I recommend this set? Yes. Obviously, yes. I wanted to share my love with these beautiful inks to whoever it is that ends up watching this video. It is just a pleasure to work with. And even though you might not like it, I do feel that liking a specific art material is quite subjective. And so I'm hoping that you do, if you do end up getting it for yourself. And hopefully you do not get disappointed because it doesn't feel like that for you. But if you are asking me personally, from all the other art materials that I've tried, I would recommend it. And are there any inks better than this? Yes, possibly. Because recently I just tried the Rura Klingna set, and that one is even more pigmented than this. However, I haven't used it as extensively as Winsor & Newton, and since I've used Winsor & Newton for quite a while now, I know how the ink behaves and how to get to the richness, the vividness of the colors I want. And so at the end of the day, it depends on how you use your material as well. There's also Ecoline. It's also quite comparable, but it's not ink, a drawing ink, it's a watercolor ink, and it's also quite amazing. I haven't even had the chance to try Dr. Page Martin, so I can't say if that set would be better than this, but from the reviews I do know that it would probably be a good competitor. who knows. So as far as pan watercolors, I think this is kind of similar to my Koh-i-Noor set, which is about the only dye-based watercolor I have in my collection. The link is up there if you're interested in looking at it. I hope you found this video informative and fun. If you like this video and you want me to review a certain brand of watercolor, for example, there's a possibility that I may have it. Let me know. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching it, and hit the dislike button if you didn't like it at all. I mean, I hope not, but feel free. I'm happy to know your thoughts and reactions, especially if you've used this product in the past or are currently using it and love it as much as I do. Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more product reviews, feel free to subscribe and hit the alert icon so you can be notified if I have a new one up. And that's it for me for today. Thank you guys for watching.